So I got to tell you the story about these two gentlemen who met in college. They were college roommates. They both graduated with honors, got jobs at the same accounting firm. They were very successful with what they did, and they moved up in the ranks. And they now operate as consultants with that firm, and they live in this very, very affluent neighborhood right next to each other. Although they had a lot of things in common, they both grew up very differently. Now, one young man grew up in a two-parent household where his father was the chief maintenance officer at the local plant. And his job was to make sure that the assembly lines kept running. So he was very good with his hands. Had very strong mechanical aptitude. He had a lot of tools, and he taught his son how to use those tools and to use his hands and to fix and to repair and to build things. So the one gentleman had a lot of his own tools, so he could fix, repair, and build things around his own home. Well, the other gentleman, he grew up in a single-parent household, and his parent had to work two jobs just to make ends meet. And the emphasis in that household was academic excellence, so that you can have opportunities and gateways to do bigger and better things to increase your income so you can live as comfortably as possible. So that was his plight and how he grew up. Well, both these gentlemen, they went together to Lowe's one day, and they filled out a ticket to enter a contest. And they both won. And the first prize was an 8x10 utility shed for their backyard. So the utility shed was going to be delivered that Saturday morning. Both gentlemen were outside, standing in their driveway, excited. Had a cup of coffee in their hand, and they were talking back and forth across the driveways, and they were ready for those sheds to show up. Well, they saw the truck coming down the road, and guess what? The sheds were on the truck, but they were not assembled. Now, that wasn't a problem for the one young gentleman whose father had a strong mechanical aptitude and taught his son how to use tools, so the son had his own tools and knew how to use them. Well, he immediately went into his garage, pulled out one tool of this and a tool of that and a tool of that and another one of this and another one of that. And he went outside and he laid all his tools down and separated all the pieces to the shed, and he got to work. No questions asked. I mean, he was in his world and he was excited. About 3 hours later, that young man had finished his shed. He put all the things in the shed. I'm talking about he put the lawnmower in there and all the rakes and all the shovels, and everything was in its place just right and just so. And he came outside that shed and he stood there and looked at that shed from the top all the way down to the bottom. He folded his arms and said, "I built that shed." Then he went over to see how his friend was doing. He walked towards his friend's backyard, and as soon as he opened the gate, before he got all the way in, he could see all the pieces to his friend's shed just kind of scattered all over the backyard. So he knew something was wrong. He took another step in and kind of peeked around the corner, and he saw his friend kind of sitting on the edge of the bench with his head in his hands, shaking his head because his friend seemed overwhelmed and clueless, not knowing what to do. But he noticed something very important. He looked on the table and on the ground around his friend. He didn't see any tools. So he knew right away what to do. He ran back to his house and he got a bag and he pulled out all the tools that he knew his friend would need to build that shed. And he ran back to his friend's yard because he was excited to help. And he went inside and he started talking as soon as he got in that yard. He said, "Hey, man, I got a bag of tools for you. You're going to need these tools to build this shed. Let me show you how to use the tools." So he said, "Hey, here's a hammer. This is how you use it. Here's a screwdriver. This is how you use it. Here's a saw, this is how you use it. Here's a drill, this is how you use it. Here's a level, here's a T-square, this is how you use it. And you're going to need it for this." So he started showing his friend how to use the tools by building the shed. So as he's standing back watching, he noticed that his friend started to figure out how to use the tools. So he's pretty much got it on his own. So he says to his friend, "Hey, I'll be back in a few minutes to help you some more." So he left and he came back about 5 hours later. Right? As soon as he came in the yard, his friend didn't know he was there. He walked around the corner, peeked around the corner because he wanted to make sure everything was all right, because the first time it was a disaster. And he saw his friend with that finished shed. He was pushing the lawnmower in the shed. And he was putting the rakes in the shed. And he was putting the shovels in the shed so they were just in their right place, just right and just so. Then he saw his friend come outside the shed. And he put his hands on his hips. And he looked at that shed from the top all the way down to the bottom. He looked at it from the left side and over to the right side. His friend folded his arms and said, I built that shed. Just about then, he said, hey, I see you built your shed. They gave each other a high five. He said, good job. He began to pack his tools up, and he said, I'll talk to you later, man. He left with his tools. Now, although it took that second guy, I want you to see what happened, took him twice as long, and he didn't even have the tools he needed to fix the shed. Somebody had to give him the tools and teach him how to use it. It didn't matter. They slapped each other's hands because the task was to build the shed. And it was mission accomplished. So here's what happened though. After that gentleman took his shed, his tools back to his yard, the one gentleman scratched his head. He said, hey, I just had a experience here. I just learned something. And he became more independent. He jumped in his car, he ran over the load, rode over the loads, he bought his own set of tools and came back and he laid them out in his shed. And guess what he started doing? Looking for things around his own house that he could fix, repair, and to build, and he became his own handyman. See, my moral of the story is this. We're going to have students from diverse backgrounds that have very different cultural experiences and strengths and gaps, and they're going to have all different levels of ability, whether it's academic or physical. We're going to have to pack a bag of tools and have them ready for those students to use so they can accomplish the task that we give them. Now, some students will already have their own tools and not need to use ours. That's okay. Offer them anyway. But then there'll be some other students that don't have any tools and are clueless on how to use them. So we're going to have to lend them our tools and show them how to use them. But you know what's going to happen? As we show them how to use them, something's going to click. And they're going to say, hey, I can get my own tools, and they'll become more efficacious, and they'll become more independent and be able to accomplish any task, whether they have to do that task alone and independently or work together with someone else in that room. My point is this. As you build your culturally responsive classroom system, give your students the tools. They'll build the shed.